now. Please note this info session is being recorded and it will upload after the info session for your future references. We will start the line of acknowledgement that I wish to acknowledge this line on which University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional line of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississauga of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this island. For today's agenda, like I mentioned earlier, we have a very packed one. We'll start with introduction and overview of the summer abroad program. Then we'll have professors introducing their own courses for the 2026 Oxford program. Then moving on with the student experience, and we will talk about how to apply and for sure the course section in the following next steps. After the formal introduction part or the info session part, we'll move to the Q&A section. Please note that only the formal info section will be recorded. For the Q&A section, it will not be recorded and will be a live question type. For today's participants and also the attendees, we do have our instructors here, as well as our staff member from the summer abroad office, and also with a student participant from this year to sharing their perspectives and to support you either in the backends. Please also note that our office open to the students. If you have further questions, please drop by and ask our questions. We also have other ways to communicate with us, which I will share with you later. Okay, so let's talk about what is the summer abroad. So for many of you, if you haven't heard of us, essentially this will take place during the summertime, so it doesn't interfere with your regular academic year. Summer abroad courses tend to be small class size, give you an opportunity to connect with other U of T students, instructors, and local experts. What is best is that you can earn a full year U of T credit within 3 to 4 weeks, so you still have time to do other things in the summer. And of course, because it's U of T direct credit, this will show up on your transcript upon completion and contribute to your CGPA overview. So essentially, summer abroad is experience of what you learn through the field trips, through the immersive learning experience. For example, for this Oxford program, you'll be visit a lot of museums based on which course you're being assigned to, and you will also have guest lectures and speakers and local experts to provide you with immersive experience. And also the field trips are curated by your professors and local staff to offer a valuable experience. And you will have also the guide through the preparation for your trip, including pre-departure orientation. And you also have the student-facing SharePoint site. More importantly, we will also have on-site staff there at Oxford to support you for every step. So why doing a summer abroad? As a student myself, I have done several summer abroad programs and I really love them. I think the immersion is one thing I would highlight, is that you will be able to experience what it feels like to be a student at the University of Oxford and live with local students and making lifelong friends. So you will also be having this opportunity to gain independence and confidence. So I think overall, it will be a great opportunity for professional and personal development. Employers like to see international experiences. So here is just a postcard showing you that we have for the 2026 summer over 30 courses internationally across 17 international locations. And I would just want to thank you for your interest in this particular program. Now, moving to the Oxford program itself, 2026 will be the 24th on-site program in Oxford, so it is one of our longest running program. The program date is from August 1st to August 29th, so consisting of 4 weeks. There will be 5 courses, which the instructor will share about their insights regarding their own courses. And the classes tend to run from Monday to Thursday. Again, Monday to Thursday, between, let's say, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon. So all courses, they all have different mandatory field trips, which will occur outside class hours. There are also the program activities such as city walking tour, high table dinner, and punting. Those are either organized by the on-site staff or provided by the Worcester College or the Oxford University there. So the host will be the Worcester College at Oxford University, and students will be housing it within the college as well. Please note that this is essentially a preliminary academic program, so students are expected to learn rather than just traveling there. We will start or begin with the professor's instructions or their introductions to their courses. Let me just double check. If Professor Banning is here, she will be teaching the cinema studies and she will talk more about the courses itself.
Hi, did you want me to go forward now?
Yes, if you're
Oh,
ready,
thanks,
thank
Joe.
you so
Thank you
much.
very much for your illuminating overview of the fabulous program at Oxford. Hi, I'm Cass Banning. I'm a professor at Cinema Studies, St. George campus, and I'd say I've been teaching there for about, oops, I hate to admit it, 30 years. I've I initiated this class, but maybe uh, just let me think, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because, most because of my colleagues' their orientation, no one was teaching British cinema. And that's part of my research. I research Black British cinema in particular. So it's wonderful to be able to teach this content, right? In the context of being in the UK, right? You can see, you know, so many things that pertain to the content as you walk on the soil. I'll just say a few things. I did have some slides, but we don't need them. They're very sexy and very good though, but we don't need them. um, just images of some of the films that we'll be looking at. Now, I would say that this course offers a critical study of British film cultures. Um, while emphasis is placed on films produced, we'll be looking at films, I would say, from the 60s, the 1960s to the present day. We'll still, just to get a sense of what came before, we'll look at foundational works. For example, travelogue, like little films like 1 minute or two that were made actually, 2 centuries ago at the end of the 19th century, mostly to do with the colonies, right? Remember, at this time that, what was it? 2/3 of the world was covered with, pink parts of the map. Remember, this is important. You can't think about England without alluding to that moment of empire because there's an afterlife as the course will demonstrate. Okay, these colonial shorts, and then we can't ignore the British documentary movement of the 20s, and then we will move into the 60s. Now, we're not just talking about plot when it comes to cinema, right? Or we're going to not just go to, hey, I like that shot. We're going to look at what we call major and minor screen cultures. Why? For their rich significance of their historical, their institutional, their political, and their aesthetic context. And we'll look at film movements and genres such as British realism, free cinema, the new wave, swinging London, and heritage cinemas, what is termed, um, you know what heritage cinema is. Like, I think that's quite commonplace, right? Heritage cinema would be films that, take place in these grand, um, not castles, but homes, very much about a stratified class system, an upstairs, downstairs kind of uh, framework, if you will. So the heritage cinema was really popular, I would say, in the 80s going forward, but that really morphs into what a term that we call Thatcherite cinema. And within Thatcherite cinema, what do we mean by Thatcherite cinema? Well, we look at these films as allegories, right? They're allegories for the state of the nation. And at this time, they would be kind of brick grit, what we call lad boy films, interventions such as queer films and Black films started to be made by Black filmmakers. They kind of intervene in this overall Thatcherite moment, which I've always found quite fascinating. But a key, the core, in other words, in broader terms, that's just a map very quickly of the many kinds of films that we'll be looking at. In broader terms, we're going to scrutinize the ways in which moving images screen the films that you'll be looking at. They really provoke complex emotional and intellectual debates, specifically the Englishness in British culture. Towards these conversations, we'll explore the functions of British film cultures around questions that I've practically devoted my life to, questions of difference, right? Considering how race, class, gender, sexuality, and migration cinematically reinscribe or subvert sedimented definitions of what is or who can be British across post-war, post-colonial challenges surrounding, indeed, like all nations, a national identity in flux. And that's important to remember, right? We're really working against these mystified notions of what constitutes Britain. As Canadians, we often get, we have a love-hate relationship with Britain. And indeed, that lens will inform even some of the scholarship. We want to kind of deconstruct. We want to break down these mystified, these mythological notions of what Britain is through the visual. Okay, our class trips. So I'm sure you're interested in them. We'll go to London twice. We will go to London twice. Once is indeed not enough. Let me just go through them. First off, we'll go to the London Museum Docklands, which is a fantastic museum, because there you see the history of colonialism, slavery, the development of workers. You see the flow of goods coming in, the exchange of goods, right? That came in down the Thames and moved up through the country. So it's a wonderful, wonderful museum. And to that end, to embellish that with a certain lens, we'll take a walking tour of the Regent's Canal, or a Black History walking tour. Or if there's enough money, I was thinking, I mean, Joe and I should talk about this, but maybe we could do a river cruise, but that's 3 times as much money. We'll see. So that's fascinating, because once again, that canal is explained insofar as the transportation of goods that came from other parts of the empire. It's a fascinating walking tour. And of course, we will go to the British Film Institute. It's a very, very important institute. Began, 100 years ago, practically, that I want you to get a sense of, because it's really a depository for film culture in Britain. It's fascinating, and it goes back, and it's a repository, but also they show films. We'll watch a film there. Also ask someone to give a talk about that institution. They have a fabulous website that we'll be interacting with. It's a very important institution. Then we'll go to the Tate Britain to do with art. It's art specifically dedicated to British film. Now, at our area, looking at moving images, has moved into these gallery spaces. So hopefully there'll be something there to interest us. But regardless, I'd like you to find a painting or a work that you can kind of use the methodology in the class and apply that to an object there. Also, there's a very sweet little museum in Lambeth called the Film Museum. And just actually yards away from where Charlie Chaplin was in a poorhouse. So that's fascinating. It's on the south side of the river. And again, it's a repository, and we'll watch some works there. And I'm also considering, because we have to really deconstruct this idea of landscape, how landscape is part of the ideology, the mythology of Britain. So I'm considering doing a tour of the Cotswolds for you to get out of Oxford to really see, the beauty, but also how with your own eyes, how that figures in. Let me think. And we don't know the exhibition schedules, but if there's some exhibitions at galleries that pertain to our topics or has moving images, we will visit them as well. Sorry, I went very quickly through. We'll watch films. Our class will go a bit over because we're watching films. In the past, I've shown a bit more innovative avant-garde work. This I'm massaging the outline a bit to make the majority of the films feature films, but nevertheless, um, not just because they're more palatable, but because yeah, I think they're, especially if you're not trained in film studies, and I'll get to that in a moment. They're, at least you have a story to grab onto, right? So those of you, cinema studies is not a discipline. I just want to make that very clear. I would call it a critical indiscipline, right? You can come from history, you can come from a myriad numbers of so-called disciplines, English, history. Let me think, what else? Anthropology. Um, Let me think. I mean, any humanities course, you'd be very comfortable. Even social science courses like sociology or anthropology, any particular programs like women's studies, SDS, what else? So you don't have to have a prerequisite in cinema studies. And surprisingly, some students in biology or even yes, biology or even more reified like physics or what have you, have done really well. You'd be surprised how you stretch a different part of your brain, you can still exceed and excel. Now, does anyone have any questions? Whoever's out there? Okay, I do have slides. Please contact me. I'm very easy to get. If you're in St. George, pop in. I'm around. Oh, next term, I'm around probably, let me think, Thursdays and Wednesdays. You can reach me at k.banning@utoronto.ca if you have any questions. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. I'm sorry, I have a conflict. I have to run off. I'm on a committee then, but thank you. I'm looking forward to working with the rest of my colleagues and meeting you all. Take care. I'm sorry I have to bop off. I've got to be on campus in 15 minutes. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Oh, my
Professor
pleasure.
Katz.
Bye bye.
Thank you. All right, that is the first course to be taught in England. Now let's move to the second course, which will be taught by Professor Dan, and it's a new course to be offered in Oxford. And the floor is yours, Professor Dan.
Hi, everyone. Joe, I'll tell you when to jump to the next slide. So jump to the next slide if you can, please. Hi, folks. My name's Dan Guadagnolo. It's Guadagnolo or Prof G if Italian is too terrifying. Totally fine. I'm an assistant professor at the UTM campus where I teach undergraduates in ICCIT, which is the Institute of Communication, Culture, Information, and Technology. And then downtown, I work with graduate students at the Munk School of Global Affairs. I'm a media historian, and that means I write about technology. And in particular, I'm really interested in communication technologies around advertising, marketing, and management, and their kind of cultural impacts on things like gender, race, class, and social power. I teach at UTM, which I'm looking through the participant list and I'm realizing that there's a lot of you guys here. Hi, from ICCIT. I teach CCT 109, which is one of our very, very large first year courses at UTM. I personally think it's the best first year class. Apologies to Professor Kamensky, who also teaches at UTM. I don't know if he does Psych 100 or not, but I have the great joy of working with lots and lots and lots of students and introducing them to the world of communication technology through a historical lens. And I'm a big fan of The Telegraph, and this really is a course over 4 weeks that is looking at things like the telegraph, from the telegraph to the internet, and the power of networks as a technology and as a social force. So I have a question, and I understand this is a webinar, so if you are a participant, you have no way to respond to the question, but I want you to take it as like an intellectual exercise. So Joe, hit me with that next slide. Uh, oh, it's gone. Oh, you got rid of that one. I forgot. I forgot you got rid of it. Okay. I don't have a question for you. Instead, I want you to think about your phone. I want you to think about the phone in front of you and who you have texted today, who might not be in Toronto, might not be at U of T, might not even be in Ontario or in Canada. This is a class about what it means to use technologies like our devices to shrink the scale of the world, both geographically and temporally, to make information move faster than people. Okay, so in this digital humanities course, it's through the DHU program at Woodsworth, we're going to be looking at the effect of network communication technologies on England, London, and the world. The innovation of the wired telegraph is really funded and pushed through by the English state, English capital, beginning in the 1800s and then into the 1900s, and obviously like becoming the internet in the 20th century. And what I'm really curious about in this course is to look at what happens when we put the center of a network technology at the center of an empire. How does that allow for the exertion of new kinds of influence, but also different kinds of social habits or social practices or economies or forms of labor to emerge as well? So in the field of communications, we call this the affordances of a new technology. How does the telegraph or the internet teach us to act differently? How does it have an effect on us? And so I have an example here on the slide. In the 1870s and 1880s, there was several attempts by the British government acting through a private capital, private industry, to lay a telegraphic wire across the Atlantic Ocean. So quite literally designing specialized boats to move across the kind of shortest distance of the Atlantic to lay a wire along the bottom of the ocean so that information, right, messages could move faster between the UK and at that point actually would have been Newfoundland at that point, still a colony of the UK, and then into the United States and into Canada. And it was such a big deal when the first wire was successfully laid that Tiffany and Company, think of them as the company that made very famous furniture and then closes down, becomes a glassware company. You're familiar with it today. They buy all that excess cable for connecting the continents. They slice it up into these like 4.5-inch bits and they sell it to celebrate the fact that information can now move across the ocean much faster than any boat would ever have been able to, much faster than any individual would. And this was such a big deal that Tiffany sold these en masse to celebrate that circulation of information. So it is a social occasion, it's a celebratory occasion because it's not only speeding up information, but it's changing economic and political orders as well. And so what we're going to do over the weeks of this course, next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. Over the 4 weeks of this course is think about how these network technologies, the ability to input information in one place and get it out elsewhere, the proliferation of them from the telegraph to the internet has these kinds of social and economic changes. What that does for British imperial power, think about the capacity to move information very quickly from the metropole, from London, to different wings of the British Empire. How that changes the kind of political and economic orientation of that structure. The other thing we'll be looking at is like lived human examples of what telegraphy and then later the internet do to our labor and our social relationships. So I'll give you a quick example of this. Perfect, Joe, well done. You read the slides. The screen on your smartphone, right? It is taking binary forms of data and it is turning it into something that is legible to you. When you send a message over WeChat or WhatsApp or iMessage, that message is translated from whatever language you speak into some form of binary code, and then it is transferred via network satellites or cellular networks to another person's device, where the screen then translates that into a language legible to the recipient, to the person you wanted to talk to. You're texting a loved one, your mom, your partner, whomever today, that message was translated through different languages, right? Well, that used to be a human job. Morse code and telegraphic codes were translated mainly by young women who did the entire work of taking a binary form of information and turning it into a written text. And so the mass popularization of the telegraph meant that new kinds of labor, new kinds of social habits were emerging as well. Let's commonly sort of thought about example of here was the rise of the London telegraph boy. So you're seeing this photo, which I shamelessly stole from Getty Images. I'm not giving them a coin. And what you're seeing here are a series of 8 young white men waiting at a telegraph booth. They're going to pick up a message, and then their job is to like run across London to deliver it to a business or a recipient of those messages. And so, one of the affordances of these technologies is not just that you're able to move information, make economic and political decisions really rapidly. It also means there's new technological and social intermediaries. These young men and the young women who translated those messages from binary Morse code into English or French or Italian or whatever language, they were getting to read up on other people's business. And so the class follows how network technologies both create these kinds of jobs and then disappear these kinds of jobs as the rise of major computation in the 1950s through World War II, and then to the internet, the rise of these more complex network technologies mean that there are endlessly more inputs and outputs for any given network. So next slide, please. We're going to pull on materials that are housed at the Oxford Museum of Science archives, as well as the Weston Library Archive. They won't let all of us go in there together, so I will go get stuff and bring it out to show it to you guys, because they have a wealth of historical material on the rise of the early internet, both the state money going in, university research money going in, and private industry money going in as well, on both the creation of the internet and the creation of the telegraph. And so we'll be visited by some of my colleagues and dear friends from the Oxford Internet Institute. And then next slide, please. And then what we're going to do towards the end of the course is look at the kind of more casualized everyday impacts of living in a now digital and electronic network. So I have a very famous photo that became quite popular around 2015, 2016 here, when some very enterprising researchers at King's College London discovered that London is now the most camera-filled, most CCTV, most recorded city on the planet. And that has a connection to both the rise of telegraphy and the influence of that network power that the early 20th century British Empire was afforded. And I think begins to reshape what a city looks like and how people move through it now that we are all participants in being able to encode information into a network, send it across the world, but also subjects of being surveilled through that network as well. Next slide, please. We have a couple to be confirmed field trips. Of course, we'll go to the Oxford History of Science Museum. We'll be hopefully visiting the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley Park, where we're going to get to see, I think very often we think about the history of technology, the rise of the internet, telegraphy, wired and wireless communication. We think of this as something that's pioneered by like the great men of business and of technology, but it is a project of statecraft and political power as well. So we're gonna draw the state into that story in everyday life as well by visiting the National Museum of Computing. A little later on in the course, I think in the last week, we'll visit London. We're going to go to the London Museum of Branding. It's a tiny museum with, I think, a very interesting impact, because they are following how this information, in terms of consumer culture, moves through these different networks to shape consumption in places like Canada, places like the major urban centers in India and around the world. And then our last sort of field trip for the course is going to be a digital surveillance scavenger hunt. I want you to photograph all of the sites in which your data is captured in Notting Hill and Kensington. I think I have one last slide. If you are an ICCIT student, and I think generally speaking, a student coming from any department that might be outside of FAS, feel free to reach out to me and I will connect you with with our advising team, or figure out who your advising team is in your own department, so we can see where this summer broad course might fit in your course requirements beyond being an elective. I just share that because for ICCIT, a DHU course can count a couple different ways, and I know a number of you are coming from our programs. So that's it for me. I really hope I get to see you in Oxford. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And for all the students, please note all of our courses are open to students of 3 campuses. So it's open to all, and do talk to your academic advisor or undergraduate coordinator for more specifics. Now let's move to the next course. This is still a new course here and will be taught by Professor Urvashi. And now I will hand the presentation to you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Sorry, if we could just go back to the previous slide, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and I'm Urvashi Chakravarti. I'm an associate professor of English at UTSC and in the Graduate Department of English. I'm so excited hearing about all of these courses, and I'm also massively excited to be teaching the Summer Abroad course on Shakespeare next term for the first time. I've taught Shakespeare for many, many years, but this is my first Summer Abroad course, so really, really looking forward to it. In terms of my own work, I work on early modern literature, so broadly defined between 1550 and 1700. And I think specifically about questions of queer and sexuality studies, critical race studies, and the history of slavery in my own work. And some of those will sort of find their way into the course. And one of the things I really want to emphasize is that this is a course that where we'll be reading a number of plays, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of what we'll be reading and how we'll be reading and why we'll be reading the things we'll be reading. But I also want to emphasize first and foremost that one of the things we'll be thinking about is the fact that every single performance of a Shakespeare play is an interpretation. And I think it's really important for us to read these plays thinking closely about their availability to critical interpretation and the way in which they are sort of living, breathing works to which we bring our own perspectives, our views on current events, which really sort of interact with current political and social context. So we'll be reading lots of Shakespeare, but we'll also be thinking about the Shakespeare industry. We'll be thinking about the economy of Shakespeare. We'll be thinking about adaptation. We'll be thinking about interpretation. And we'll be spending quite a bit of time thinking about the material conditions of staging. So what does it mean, for instance, to watch Shakespeare in an outdoor theatre versus an indoor theatre? What does it mean for us as audience members? What does it mean for us to be watching a Shakespeare play today in 2025 versus what it would have been like perhaps in 1600? All of these are questions we're going to be grappling with, and we're also going to be thinking extensively about the Shakespeare's own sort of political and social context, and we'll be engaging with a number of different cultural context. And of course, London and Oxford are the perfect places in which to think about those questions. So, as I've already mentioned, it's important to remember that Shakespeare's plays are popular, right? They draw massive crowds, and they are staged for a wide populace. And as I've already said, every staging is an interpretation. So we're going to be going to see a couple of plays, at least a couple of plays. And one of the things we'll be discussing is how these performances enrich these plays, interpret these plays, reimagine these plays, and sometimes again speak directly to current events. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Shakespeare's Globe is, of course, one of now the most important and famous sites of contemporary Shakespeare performance. It's a sort of recreation, obviously, of an early modern theatre. And it's a really, if you've not been, it's a really interesting space to encounter Shakespeare because, of course, there are various contingencies. There have been numerous debates over the course of the Globe's existence about things like lighting, sound amplification, and what do those practices, which would not have been around in the early modern period, do to our understanding of and enjoyment of Shakespeare? There was a period where the Globe would, of course, put on original practice performances, which is to say they tried to stage them as closely as they could to early modern performances, including having men playing female parts, for instance. And so even these broader currents in performance, in staging, in the material conditions of Shakespeare are part of the conversation about what Shakespeare means, how we read Shakespeare, and what it is that we think about when we think about Shakespeare. So the exact plays that we hope to see at the Globe are a little up in the air at the moment because they haven't announced their summer 2026 schedule. But once that schedule is announced, we will, or I will sort of make sure to incorporate whatever plays the Globe is staging into our syllabus, so that of course we're reading the plays we're going to be seeing and can sort of think really specifically about how these stagings are interpreting these plays and why these interpretations are taking place. If we could go to the next slide, please. We'll also be thinking about, as I've mentioned, the broader context for Shakespeare's plays. And so this includes political and social context, cultural context, but also these larger questions of imperialism and global contact. The moment when Shakespeare was writing his plays was, of course, also the incipient moment of English empire. So we'll be thinking about questions of race and colonialism, and also about questions of class, of labour, of gender, and of sexuality. So some of the sites we may visit include the National Gallery to see some of these cultural artefacts and these artistic works. Some of them we may also visit Hampton Court Palace, one of Henry VIII's residences. And I'm hoping, if we can manage it, that we might be able to look into Black History Walk to think about the long genealogy of racialized presence in London and what that means for our understanding of Shakespeare's plays. And then if we could go to the next slide, please. So finally, we'll also be thinking, as I mentioned, about the cultural place of Shakespeare. What does Shakespeare mean? What is the Shakespeare industry? What does Shakespeare mean to England? What does it mean to our idea of England? And so to that end, we'll be visiting Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust, of course, the birthplace of Shakespeare, but also the sort of economy and the industry of Shakespeare that has arisen around Stratford-upon-Avon, and also in our imaginary of English culture. So what space does Shakespeare occupy in the canon and in our curriculum? How and why does Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust construct Shakespeare in a particular way? And how is that image of Shakespeare changed or evolved? How does it affect how we read his plays, how we stage his plays? And what does the Shakespeare of the future perhaps look like as well? So these are a lot of questions that I know I've sort of put on the table for our 4-week course, but I hope we'll have a chance to think about them over the course of the month. And I really look forward to hopefully meeting many of you and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Okay, we still have 2 more courses to be covered. Thank you everyone for your patience. And the next course has been a long offering by the Summer Abroad program at Oxford, which will be taught by Professor William Wilson. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joe. So about 1,000 years ago, 2 related things were happening in England. Oxford University was founded, usually thought to be the 2nd or 3rd university in anything like the modern sense in the world. So that was happening. And another thing was happening was that certain ideas that we still cling to in terms of crime, criminal justice, punishment were being developed. And we, in this course, can trace the development of ideas about and practices of crime and criminal justice, and also constitutional ideas about government. And we can trace them from that time, 1,000 years ago, going forward in England, and then more widely. And we can see how those ideas were changed and augmented in particular times, especially in the 18th century and in the 19th century. We can see how those ideas changed, and we begin to get something that looks really quite like the modern criminal justice system. And the influence of England and Britain on Canadian developments, of course, was enormous. So many of the ideas about policing, about punishment, about how the courts should function, those kinds of things really were exported from Europe, especially from England, and form the basis of how we operate in Canada. So on this course, we're able to, again, like the other courses, make the most of the fact that we're in Oxford, in a college which has some very old buildings that go back almost 1,000 years. We're able to make the most of that to see how our contemporary practices in criminal justice developed, how they developed in Canada and how they developed in the United Kingdom. And we're able to look in detail at things like policing and punishment, various issues about the law. And then we're able to sort of round out the course by looking at two very interesting influences. One of those is newer ideas that have been tried in the UK, which have had some influence in Canada, but not very much, where some certain programs, certain particular ideas about policing and so forth were tried in the UK and were given a bit of a shot in Canada, not quite in the same form. And that allows us to ask the question, well, could we bring those ideas to Canada? But also we're going to look at ideas that developed quite a lot in Canada and which have been influential in the United Kingdom. And we'll sort of finish the course talking about those. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a criminology student, criminology and socio-legal studies, you're going to be able to start with some knowledge of these things, but we'll be looking at all of these things in our own way. So you'll have lots to learn. But if you're not a criminology student, when I first taught this course, I was asked to develop it so non-criminology students could do it. And we have always many students who don't have a criminology background who are able to benefit from the course and to enjoy it too. And let me say a bit about the organization of the course. We will have 2 visits to London. One visit very early on in the first week will allow us to track over some of the broad history we're talking about, changes from 1,000 years ago to the 18th century into the late 19th century in our visit there. And then we'll have another visit in a couple of weeks' time where we'll talk about one of the topics we'll be discussing, which is the history of political violence and security concerns. And we're going to be able to do a sort of walking tour and then a bus tour of London, walking tour of the centre of London, a bus tour that takes a bit further out, looking at the very long history of serious political violence, which has marked London like any other major city in the world. So we'll have those visits. We're also going to have some guest speakers. We have great guest speakers that can come. We will have a Canadian professor of criminology who's actually a fellow at Worcester College and lives in England, who's an expert on sentencing, and he'll talk to the class about sentencing. A forensic psychiatrist, a man whose training was in psychiatry and then in assessments for the courts and testimony for the courts and working with mentally disordered offenders. And he will come to talk about 2 very interesting aspects of his work, which involve both the UK and Canada. One of which is assessing the psychological impacts of wrongful conviction. And the other is dealing with the situation which we'll have discussed at different times in different ways, which is the conflict in Northern Ireland and the gradual easing but not complete removal of community tensions within Northern Ireland. And Dr. Grounds has been involved in working in Northern Ireland on as an advisor on the release of people who were jailed for terrorist offences during the violence. So Dr. Grounds will come. We will also have a talk from local police officers who will come to talk about their work. And that will give you students an opportunity to ask them questions. And we will have a small assignment related to that, which will allow you to discuss in your own way some of the issues that are raised in that discussion. And last but not least, we will have a visit from an ex-student from the criminology program in Toronto, who moved to the UK to do a master's and is now finishing a PhD at Oxford. But she and her partner and her sister have set up an extraordinary organization which started as a brewery and is now a brewery and a bakery and has some places where they sell their food and drinks. And they set that up so that they could make a project of hiring a significant number of people who were recently released from prison or who were on day release from prison coming up to leaving. And so that's a fantastic project, and she'll come and talk about that. So we've got the visits, we've got the speakers, and I just want to finish by saying a bit about the work and the and how we approach it. So a key focus of this course is that you will write a number of relatively small essays or in-class tests. And so writing is a very central part of this. And I promise you, you can be the best writer in your class, or you can be someone who dreads writing a short essay, and you are going to be better by the end of this course than you are now. You will be able to come and see me almost every day for open office hours. We will also make an arrangement for everyone to come and see me for a small appointment to talk about a term paper they're going to write. You'll get feedback on the assignments, and you can talk to me about that. You can come and talk to me about anything you like. You will find that this is really helpful to your essay writing, your writing in general. And I promise you, however far-fetched this sounds, even though it's not possible to ever have a course where no students are a bit anxious about writing, because some students do feel anxious about it, but I promise you, you're going to enjoy these writing exercises much more than you think in advance. So this is a course which will help you learn about criminal justice. It will help develop your academic skills, your reading and researching and understanding, but it will also help your writing. And it was all done through very continuous opportunities to speak to me about the work, about how it's going, and to incorporate the feedback you get and the ideas you develop in the next assignments. You're going to be very, very proud of the work you write, particularly that towards the end of it, where, as I say, some students will be amazed at how well you write, able to write, and some students who are already very good will still be very pleased with how well they were able to perform, how much they were able to understand. So I think that's all I want to say. I hope to see as many of you as possible in Oxford. It'll be a wonderful experience, not just the academic part, but the whole thing is an extraordinary experience. I've taught it many times. We love teaching it. Students love attending it. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. And to all students, if you have any questions, please also raise your questions in the Q&A function, and our staff member will be able to respond to them, and all our professors will be also to talk about them later after the formal presentation part. Thank you. Now moving to the next part, our next course will be taught by Professor Stewart, and this is a psychology course that I personally took when I was a student. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joe. Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you for your attention. I know that I'm last. I hope that not least. I echo everything that Professor Watson said about the course, about writing, about the availability of help, and about the really wonderful opportunity that all of these courses present, and the opportunity to spend 4 weeks in Oxford, which is a beautiful, inspiring place, and indeed, lifelong experiences have been made over there. I've also been teaching in the program, not as long as Professor Watson, but for about 11 years. I think that this will be my 9th year, a 7th time in Oxford. I taught it twice before in Italy as well. I taught it once during the pandemic. I'm sort of losing count if it's 9th or 10th time, but yes, those of us who teach love teaching it, love students, feel that this is the way that university work education should work. We tend to be very, very available for helping students with writing and helping and talking to them about career plans and so on. I'm also at UTM. I'm full professor in the teaching stream. I served as director of the psychology undergraduate program for most of my career. So that again, I'm really more of a career teacher, student advisor, and so on. The course that I'll be teaching, Joe, next slide, please, is a course on disability. So it's not a core psychology course. It's very much of an interdisciplinary course on disability that is offered in other departments at other universities, often by disability studies programs. Because psychology is an empirical science, we really, I tend to teach this course from a combination of two important models, the medical model and the social model of disability, which can be applied, of course, more broadly to other issues too. And the one question, the one relatively, it sounds simple question that we're trying to answer in this course is disability an inevitable consequence of impairment? So is it the case that if you have a disability, if you do have an impairment, sorry, like a broken arm or a broken leg, will it lead to that disability experience, like you not being able to walk, you not being able to talk, or more broadly, you not being able to work, you not being able to go to school, and so on? According to the medical model, the answer is very clear. Yes, if your body is broken, that is the key reason as to why it is that you will not be able to participate in these kind of experiences. So if you're attending university and the classroom is on the second floor and there's no elevator and no ramp, well, you cannot attend it if you have a broken leg because you have a broken leg. So the medical model very much explains the disability experience based upon medical issues. You have an impairment, your body is broken. The social model, conversely, looks at it very differently. It locates disability externally. So if you have a broken leg, whether or not you'll be able to take classes which are on the second level will be determined entirely by external factors. Is there an elevator or not? If there is an elevator, you will be able to. If there's not an elevator, you will not be able to take your classes. So these are two very interesting models, and we'll learn that these are not mutually exclusive. They apply differently depending upon the disability, and we'll also see that they depend a lot on history, culture, nationality. In many senses, when we look at the history of treatment of people with disabilities, the key model that we used was religion, where we saw religion and God as the explainers of the experiences that we have. Once medicine started to advance, then the medical model took over, and we saw medicine as being the key explainer of the experiences that people have. And today, the social model has become much, much more common in terms of looking at the responsibility in terms of society for the experiences that people have. But some have argued that it has gone too far and that there will be situations like a person who was born deaf may not be able to play violin in the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, regardless of how much he or she is accommodated by society. So these questions are very interesting. They're very nuanced. They're very frank. We focus on disability, but in the end of the day, we learn about the rest of the world and about society very, very broadly, including about things that you heard from these other courses about race and about ethnicity and about culture and about gender and so on. So in many senses, you'll see commonality between all of these courses, but we address them in different ways, perhaps in different perspectives, using different evidence. And as you've heard, London, Oxford are in many senses the center of the world in terms of studying any of these issues because so much of this happened, so much of this has been developed in these areas. Like, for example, Down syndrome has been discovered in London, the first major institution which we will visit in the Western world for people with mental illness is in London, the infamous Bethlehem institution that you read about in your Psych 100 textbooks. So we are going to have quite a few field trips. We'll have 3 field trips to London. For the most part, we'll be going to a couple of sites in 2 of them, and the third one we'll be going to 3 sites. As well, we will have another field trip, a walking trip in Oxford to see various buildings at the university in terms of how they'll be accommodated. And we will also have 2 guest speakers that will help enrich our experience. So thank you for that, Joe. Let me go through a few words about the various different places that we'll be visiting. So as you heard, the University of Oxford is very old. Most of the buildings over there are hundreds of years old. They were built in a time that people with disabilities were far from being included into society, and many of them are not accessible. And, and a big theme in this course is going to be how do we balance modern, prevalent approaches towards people with disability, towards inclusion of people with disability, where everybody, just like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, has the same rights in terms of accessing public spaces. How do we balance all of that with preserving the historical beauty and splendor of some of these places? I mean, look at that beautiful staircase. It wouldn't look that good if we put in, a steel elevator or ramp over there. So we'll be taking a tour of the university to see what are some of the solutions. Next, Joe. I just mentioned it, we'll be visiting the Bethel Museum of the Mind. So that, again, as many of you read in your Psych 100 textbooks, this is one of the first major institutions for people with mental illness in the Western world. It's been around for hundreds of years. It has moved locations several different times, and we're going to learn about the history of institutionalization. Yes, about the horrors that you've read about, but also what are the factors that determined whether or not these places worked or not, how these places were funded, how these places fit into popular culture of the day. What were some of the positive attempts to make these places more manageable, kinder kind of places, and in what ways were they successful and in what ways did they fail? Next. We will be visiting the Foundling Museum. So that's another interesting institution that looked after children who were often abandoned for many different reasons. Many children who were abandoned were children with disabilities. London has a very, very strong history of kids who were abandoned because of socioeconomic reasons, poverty, and so on. So we're going to be learning about how these places functioned, particularly concerning children. In the former slide, the former institution will be learning about adults and mental health. And here we're going to talk about children in general terms. That's very close to the campus of University College London, where we will be making two other visits. A very, very interesting place. Next. We will be visiting the London Science Museum. One of the things that we'll be learning about in order to understand the medical model is we're going to be learning about advances in medicine, and some of the advances in medicine will include like the development of prosthetic devices. Okay, so we'll be looking at some technologies that were designed particularly in order to improve the lives of people with disabilities, like prosthetic legs and arms. But we're going to also look at technologies that were developed for everybody that made the life of people with disabilities easier, more straightforward, and more accessible, like the telephone and like the internet and like computers and so on. And we'll be visiting a couple of different exhibitions at the London Science Museum for you to be able to explore. All of the field trips that we have, except for this one, will actually have somebody waiting for us there, a guide that will be taking us through the site and teaching us something about that particular site. Here, you will, for the most part, have the time to roam around those two very large exhibits and be able to learn from yourself from the many, many different examples of both technologies that were designed particularly for people with disabilities and technologies that were designed more universally for all of us that have made the lives of people with disabilities more accessible. Next, please. This was new. We'll be visiting the UCL Pathology Museum. So I mentioned advances in medicine. Prior to modern medicine, if a person had a disability, that was presumed to be a punishment from God. Then one day medicine was developed and we were actually able to see that in certain cases, for example, that a person had mental illness and they lived in an institution, and after they died, of course, without family consent, which was not necessarily necessary in the 18th century, they would remove that person's brain and they would dissect it and they would see that maybe there was a brain tumor over there, or maybe there were other major lesions within the brain. So we're going to learn about how pathology, the field of pathology, has developed in order to learn about the causes of disability. And once we were actually able to see as a society that disability is very, very often correlated with some physical damage to our body, we were able to learn that indeed medical, biological, physiological explanations might be better explanations for the disability experience than God. The question why is still not one that medicine can answer. So it doesn't completely replace the religious explanations, but it certainly in many, many ways broadens it when we were able to establish that there's a very clear underlying experience. So we'll be visiting the University College London Pathology Museum. That was a very, I want you to know that some of these museums are not that easy to get access to. Very often they're only open to medical students. So we're very fortunate after working with them for many years that they offer that opportunity for us. So it will be the first for me at that particular location, and I'm very excited. Joe, next one, please. We will be visiting the College of Optometrists Museum, and yeah, the eye over there in the middle is there on purpose. As you see on the right, Dr. Neil Handley is a close colleague of mine. He is a world expert in eye pathologies and in the development of optometry. And what we're going to be doing over there, as you could see on the left, that's a very famous picture called The Tax Collectors. And you could see that these men are not necessarily all that young. And one of the gentlemen, with the one with the red hat, is using eyeglasses in order to be able to do a good job as a tax collector. So eyeglasses, eyeglasses suggest a particular image. So first of all, it's a very ubiquitous and common, perhaps the most common disability image. So many of us who wear glasses are basically advertising to the world, hey, I don't see very well. Okay. And it's kind of interesting that over the years, it has taken upon itself positive connotations too, including people being very smart and including fashion. So as you could see, one of the walls in that museum, and there are many walls, and they're all covered with many pictures like that, Dr. Handley will be taking us around the museum and explaining to us how, over the years, the stereotypes associated with people who wear glasses, eyeglasses, have changed from positive to negative to racist, including anti-Semitic, and on and on and on, to very, very, very positive fashion images as well. It's very, very interesting tour. Next, please. We will be visiting the famous Freud Museum. So, of course, Freud, and psych students here, you all know who he is. He lived, of course, in Vienna most of his life, and him being Jewish, given that when World War II broke out and the Nazis took over Vienna, he had to leave very, very quickly. And he was able to leave with most of his stuff to London. And so it's quite interesting that Vienna also has a Freud museum, but all of his stuff, or most of his stuff, is actually in the museum in London. And he lived there for 7 or 8 months until he passed away. So we'll get to see the actual house where he really lived and where his daughter, Anna Freud, lived and practiced for many, many years. And we will actually get to see the real Freudian couch. There's also a replica of the Freudian couch, which was used in a movie, and we'll get to lie down on it if we want. So that's a pretty cool place. I think that, again, the psych students here, in many of your courses, you heard nothing but bad things about Freud. His methodology was wrong. It wasn't empirical. We studied only women with psychopathology with retrospective memories. Here we're going to learn a little bit more about the positive long-term contributions that Freud has made to the field of psychology in terms of things like understanding that childhood really matters and understanding that talking therapies could be very effective. Next. Right. I don't know if that's our final one, but if not, we will be visiting another place we'll be visiting at the University College London we'll be visiting the Galton collection. Again, psych students, you may have learned about Sir Francis Galton and his contribution to the field of statistics. And he has made a wonderful contribution to areas, very large and important areas like regression. But he's also the father of eugenics. Okay, he was a cousin of Charles Darwin. So that whole notion of survival of the fittest, and that's how the way works, was kind of incorporated by Sir Francis Galton to justify, hey, people with disabilities don't contribute to society like everyone else. So let's apply Darwinian theory to understand this whole thing. And well, that's what happens in the jungle too. The stronger kill the weaker, and that's the way the world goes. And he advocated that approach, which really was terrible, of course, for people with disabilities. And of course, it started with people with disabilities, but then in, of course, Nazi Germany, it moved on to Jews and homosexuals and Catholic priests and all kinds of other quote unquote undesirables that did not fit the perfect notion of how people should be, which was basically the Aryan race. So that's a pretty lousy history of science lesson that we're going to learn over there too at UCL in terms of its application to the study of disability. Do we have any more? Okay, that's it. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and I'll be more than happy to give you any more information about it. And I hope to see many of you there. Thank you very much for your attention, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you to all professors who delivered the presentations. And to all students, I hope this can pique your interest into applying. Now, after discussing all the courses to be offered in 2026, we should discuss or talk about more about what the location and the program details. So essentially, living at Oxford means not only you'll be taking courses there, but you will be living at Worcester College or Oxford University for 1 month. So it is a very old university, and the locations, as you can see on the photos on the right, students will be divided into different accommodations, and each student will be situated in the private rooms with in-suite showers and washrooms. We'll talk about later, but more importantly, students will be supported by the on-site staff. They will be able to support you 24/7 for emergencies, and they will accompany you with all the field trips. Now here's the photos of the residence, including the laundry room and also the communal kitchen. For students will be stayed in the single room with ensuite washroom. There will be Wi-Fi, and also, more importantly, breakfast will be included for the whole duration from Monday to Sunday. And you also have a shared kitchen that you can cook your own meals, and there will be the supermarkets nearby the campus as well. Laundry machines for sure you can also use, and you will also have access to the portal storage. It's more like a security or the personnel on ground that you can seek help as well. Please note one thing is that as an old historical building, there will be no air conditioning at the residence. That being said, students will have access to other parts of the college, such as junior common room and the college pub. The tennis court and basketball yard is subject to maintenance, and we will provide you with more information close to date. In terms of the program activities, so you can expect there will be a welcome reception or a college tour afterwards. Then our on-site staff will be able to organize a city walk tour. This should normally follow on the second day after your arrival, since the program starts on Saturday. At the end of the program, there will also be a high table dinner. This will be a formal dinner with professors and on-site staff. This will happen on the last day of the program. During the program, there will be also other social activities, optional ones, to be offered by the on-site staff, such as painting and visiting to other parts of the college, including the high tea as well. Talking about the transit or the transport to the Oxford from London, it can be quite straightforward, and there's no group flight to be organized by the Summer Abroad office. You're responsible to book your own travel plans. So in that sense, you can decide whether to arrive a few days earlier to get rid of the jet lag, or to travel to other parts of the country if you decide to find a more affordable fare. That being said, our office will provide information on a suggested flight itinerary and we will try to arrange bus shuttles available for students who were on the recommended flight. Next, we also have a past student participant, Hugo, who did the program this year, and he will talk about his experience related to the program. Hugo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm in my third year currently. So I did the program in my second year. So just this past summer, I'm doing a double major in sociology and criminology at St. George. So yeah, I'll just be taking you guys sort of through a somewhat chronological order of my trip and experience. So the first slide is just some pictures of the res buildings and one shot of the library inside one of the buildings. So the first one is where I stayed. It's I quite liked it. It's called Gloucester. Um and it was my favorite one. I went to like all the different res ones. It's really clean, really modern. I know some people might be a bit worried about like the cleanliness and the because it's an old campus, obviously. But it's really nice and the staff there are super nice. So if there's anything you need, um they're really helpful. And then yeah, there's so for each of the halls, each of the dorm buildings, there's a laundry machine right across. I think it's like seven Canadian dollars for each laundry load you do in total. So like wash and dry. I did my laundry once a week, so three times while I was there, since you're there for around like no more than like 4 weeks. So yeah, Joe, can you go to the next slide, please? And then it's a really beautiful campus. It's almost like a secret oasis. Like the first two are just pictures I got on the trails there. It takes around 15 to 20 minutes to walk around the whole campus. There's two fields. One of them is where you can play sports, and then the other one is sort of just where you can just sit and hang out. And then the third picture is just another one of the res buildings from outside. And then yeah, next slide, please. So then, yeah, as was mentioned, we do get to go on some walking trips around Oxford. These are usually led by some students that are currently at Oxford, and they're working for like something called like the certificate program, which we also sort of like participate in with some guest speakers that are really cool, which I would suggest going to because you get like a certificate of participation, and it looks really cool to have. I still have mine somewhere. It says like you went to Worcester College, and it's nice to have. So yeah, first two pictures are of like Oxford's like sort of local museum. It's called the Ashmolean. It's really nice. I would say if it was in Canada, it would definitely be like a top three museum. It's a lot smaller compared to like European standards, but it's very like there's so much in there that you would not get to see in Canada. And then the third picture is like I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a really famous sort of Oxford landmark. It's called the Radcliffe Camera. You get to go inside, which most people don't. So I would highly suggest you do go on that tour, because you do get to go inside. It's sort of like their version of Robarts, but it's a lot nicer, admittedly. And yeah, it's really cool. Next slide, please. So then these pictures are also part of walking tours. The first one is actually you can just sort of go whenever it's on. It's the Oxford Farmers Market. It's nice to go get lunch there because it's a lot cheaper than what you can normally get around Oxford, just because the English pound currency exchange is quite high. So yeah, there's a lot of like local ethnic food, because there's quite a high population of like people from different countries that live in Oxford. So you get a lot of different, if you're from outside of Canada, there's like Tastes of Home, there's like Asian food. I had a really good like fried chicken stall there, surprisingly, but it was cool. The second one is from inside. I don't know if anyone is really into Hogwarts, like Harry Potter. I think I chose the right picture. But this one is like the restricted section of the library in Hogwarts. It's inside one of Oxford's like buildings. And you get to go on a tour there, which is also like usually closed off, but U of T gets a special tour, and that was really nice. And then the third one is just a nice picture of Oxford's skyline. It's actually a really nice place. I know it might look a little boring, but when you walk on the streets, it's like really historic. It's actually really cool. Everything is like cobblestone. So I would suggest bringing good walking shoes just because it can be tough walking on the cobblestone. And that view is from one of the towers. And then for the crim class, I think all of the classes go to London. But for the crim class, we did all of our field trips to London. So I think this was on our second field trip. So the first two pictures are of Borough Market. This one was just sort of like a free time, like for lunch. So I'd highly suggest going to there. I don't know if anyone, like, I'm sure everyone has Instagram, but there's like this really trendy, like this chocolate covered strawberries. You should go try. And then there's a lot of food stalls. I got fish and chips while I was there. I actually thought it was okay. There's another fish and chips place that I would suggest going to, but it's in Manchester. I'll get to that later. And then the last two pictures are just sort of the third picture, I don't know if anyone recognizes that. I maybe chose the bad picture for it, but it's also a Harry Potter movie shooting scene. I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was in the fourth or fifth movie, and then all the Death Eaters like sort of take down a bridge. So that was cool to see. And then obviously the last one is the Tower Bridge. We go on a field trip to the Tower of London to see some of all of the artifacts and stuff there. That was my favorite one, because when I was younger, I had a very big medieval obsession. So that was cool to see all the knights and stuff. Next slide. Um, and then these ones are just for my personal time on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You get free time to go and do whatever you want. So I went back to London and I also went to Manchester. Make sure you also study, but I'm sure everyone knows how to balance that since you're at U of T. So the first one I would highly suggest going to is, I think it's called Horizon 24. I might have the number wrong, but if you just search it like Horizon Outlook, it's free. Because I know there's another one, the Shard, which is like the really famous tall, pointy building. That one costs money to go up to, and there's also the Sky Garden. But the one I went to, just make sure you book your tickets in advance if you want to get some really cool pictures of London's, um, like sort of skyline from above. It's really nice to have souvenirs that you can send to your friends and family. The second one is the National Gallery. If you're into art, or honestly, even if you aren't, I would really suggest going. It's really nice. Just super cool. Lots of really nice paintings. My favorite ones were like the ocean, just because I think you can't really see some of like the quality of the art you can't really find in Canada very easily. And then the third one, obviously, like you have the London Eye, Big Ben. Yeah, if you just do like a quick walking tour around London by yourself for one day, you can hit a lot of the landmarks and just get pictures of them and go inside if you have the time. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is some other things I did. So picture one is the Royal Palace. You can watch the changing of the guard if you want to do that. Really cool. It's also very busy. But the second one is Royal Albert Hall. So if you're also again like into like classical music, the arts, I would suggest going to try and get a show at the Royal Albert Hall. It was like really, really nice. I don't know if you guys have watched the TSO in Toronto, but the quality, like it's like really like amazing. I don't know how to describe it, but like the standard of everything in like Europe and London, like everything is really, really nice and you can really enrich yourself um alongside what you're learning during your studies with all the professors. And then the third one is the National History Museum. I think that's the name of it, the National History Museum or Science Museum, something like that. It was really cool, very busy. So I would suggest booking tickets in advance. Like for everything, everywhere you go, if you can book tickets in advance, book tickets in advance, just so you don't waste your time. And then yeah, I also went to Manchester. It was really nice. I really liked it. I got the best fish and chips while I was there in the second picture. If you do get fish and chips, I would suggest going to like a mom and pop shop. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but something like a hole in the wall. Don't go to like a restaurant. A lot of them are tourist traps. I think I had two or three fish and chip plates while I was there. This one was the best. Um, but yeah, and then the third picture is called the John Rylands Library. I think it's like the oldest one in Manchester and possibly one of the oldest ones in England. And that was very nice to go visit. Next slide, please. If you're into sports, you can go do like I did. I just went to go visit all the stadiums, get some pictures. First one is in Manchester. First one and the third one, obviously, in Manchester. The second one is in Chelsea. It's like near London. It's like a neighborhood in London. I hope I have like the names right of like the geography, but it's like 25-minute walk away from like the north part of London. Next slide, please. And then I was lucky enough, I got tickets to go watch an actual game in North London. Um, it was Arsenal. It's very cool. Best team in the world, obviously. And yeah, that was very nice to get that experience. Next slide, please. And then this one was really cool. I thought of it because my mom is really into tennis. But I went up to Wimbledon. Or is it down? I actually haven't. I think it's a bit north. Or no, is it south? It's like southwest of London, I think. I hope I'm right. But I went to Wimbledon, and it was really, really nice because obviously during actual Wimbledon season, it's hard to get tickets. You have to like stand in line for a long, long time or have a lot of money, and you get tickets. But this was cool because we got to go onto all the courts, and it's a really unique experience. Even if you're not a big tennis fan, I would say it's like a once in a lifetime experience. You never know when you're gonna go back. So if you have like any like niche interest, like just Google it, do your research prior to going to Oxford because Oxford is in a really nice like central location. It's like London, Manchester, like Wimbledon. It took me no more than 2 hours to go get to by train. Manchester was the farthest one. It's because it's up far north near Liverpool. So that took me like around 3 hours. But Wimbledon was definitely like my top three experience, like other than Oxford while I was there. Next slide, please. And yeah, so that was sort of like a really quick rundown of my experience in around 10 minutes. So now I'll actually get down to some like suggestions and advice, and if you have questions, you can put them down below and I will try and answer them. But the first one is transportation. I would suggest getting the Brit Rail pass. So it's suggested to you in like your student pack when you get into the program. But it's called BritRail, so it's a really cheap way of getting tickets for trains. It's sort of like a Presto pass for tourists. It cost me, I would say 300 Canadian, and I got 8 days of unlimited travel, and I used 5 of them. And I would say I saved like a few hundred Canadian dollars because of it. Usually, like the train system, how it works in Europe and England, is you have to book your ticket, or you don't even have to book it. You just buy a ticket when you get there. But there's different time slots. So for example, if I'm going from Oxford to London, I might have to show up to the station and I buy a ticket online or in person for like 8 a.m. And if you miss that train, you have to get a new ticket. So with BritRail, you can just sort of show up, use Google Maps, find out when the train is leaving, and then you like tap in and out. So that was really easy. Took a lot of stress off my back. Um, Budgeting, this one is also like the big key question. Keep in mind the currency exchange rate. So I don't know everyone's like different financial situation, but for me, um, my parents helped me pay for like the tuition and like the fees for it. So I was able to like use my personal savings for like my personal spending. So I saved up around like 2,000 Canadian dollars. That should cover it. I also suggest applying for the CIE funding. That one, they allow anyone, like whether or not you have financial aid, and it's not merit based. It's just sort of you do an application and they'll give you up to $1,000, I believe. So that was really nice. Um, yeah, just make sure like you budget like how much what you want. Like for groceries, I went to a groceries place I think once a week to get dinner. And sometimes lunch. I bought like some bread and some like sliced ham and cheese just to make sandwiches for lunch. Because spending like £10 every day for lunch was a little crazy. Like even in my first week, I said I can't do this. Um, and then for dinner, I usually went out like with friends or by myself. Or if I got back late from studying or a train trip, I would just go to the train station and they have really good pre-made food that's pretty cheap. And then also shopping, make sure you budget for shopping, like souvenirs for yourself, your family. Like I said, just try and plan everything ahead, like booking in advance is really nice because you spend it before you get there and then it feels like you don't have to spend money when you're there. Also if you know what you want to buy. So if you want to go to like I can't think of a store, but if you want to go to Harry Potter World or one of those tours, for example, and you know you want to buy a Harry Potter wand, you can budget for that before. So when you get there, you know you have like your list of essentials that you want to get and whatnot. So what to bring? Obviously, your school stuff, so like a laptop, iPad, Make sure you don't forget that. Like your charging cords, make sure you get the adapter. And then for clothes, I would suggest I brought um as you can see in the left picture, that's like for high table dinner. You don't have to like bring anything crazy. I know for the guys it's pretty standard. You don't even need a suit jacket, but you do need a tie. So do get a tie. So you can get like a collared shirt, a tie, and then some dress pants for guys, and then like some nice casual shoes that fit with your outfit. And then I know for the ladies, um some of my friends they just bought their dress when they were there, so they didn't have to pack it. But yeah, as you can see, it's not super crazy. Like you don't need to buy like a prom dress or anything. You can buy a nice like simple dress. So don't stress about that. But for the weather, I would bring a rain jacket, obviously, because it does rain in England. Not too much as you would think in August, but it does rain sometimes. Um, I would also bring, what else did I bring? I brought two jackets. I brought like a rain jacket and then like sort of like an all-purpose jacket just to wear out. I brought 5 pairs of pants because you can do the laundry. I brought jeans because you don't have to wash those too much. And air drying your clothes is really difficult because of the humidity in Oxford. And I do know that some people like you don't like to dry your clothes because the dryers can be kind of dirty. Um, but yeah, I brought 5 pairs of pants and then like an assortment of t-shirts and long sleeve shirts. I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but try and bring stuff you can sort of mix and match. So, you may bring 3 shirts, but you can combine them into like 5 different outfits. So it puts a lot of less stress on your suitcase. Because I brought a duffel bag, a fairly large backpack, and then I brought a carry-on suitcase, and then I also had like a tote bag just to bring out and about. I think that's all the essentials that I was stressed about bringing. Don't forget your passports and your ID. Um, and then studying. You can't use any of the libraries, unfortunately, since we're not like actual Oxford students. We're just like visiting. There is a library pass, but I wouldn't get it just because it's fairly expensive for the amount of like usage you'll probably get out of it. So I would just use any cafes around nearby. You can go to some free libraries, and there's one in the mall that's really nice, and it has free Wi-Fi. Um, and studying, I would read. It depends on your class for crim. I went over like my lecture notes like after each class. And then there was course readings. You can do those pretty lightly, take some notes on them. But yeah, and then on the weekends, I worked on like the essays that we had. I think there's like there was one larger essay that we had to prepare for. That was like a research one. So that one took me 2 days. And just remember, like you have a lot of time. It's not like regular classes, like during U of T time and scheduling, you have like a lot of time. So when I say like one day, I mean like you have like an allocated like 6 hour uninterrupted day. So you can do all your homework in like one day and then the rest you can chill. If you're interested in psych, I do know that psych has a bit more like essays and tests compared to the other classes. I think Sin has quite a few too, but I that was just my friends telling me, so they could be exaggerating. So just read the syllabus. So my extra suggestions, I already kind of went over food. Like I said, make reservations, do your research if you're into any sort of cuisine. But for safety, I do know like the pickpocketing stereotype is true. One of my friend's sisters did get pickpocketed. Um, so whenever you're out and about, try not to wear headphones if you can, just because I don't know, the pickpockets are kind of smart. They know if you're a tourist. Keep your phone on you. It's like 2 hands. It's not like Toronto. You can't just like be distracted when you're walking. Don't jaywalk. The British, they don't like jaywalkers at all. They don't like they'll just run you over or honk their horn at you. Um, and then try and bring a friend with you wherever you go. Especially on the train at night. It's really busy in the summer, so you should be okay. But if you're worried about that, you can just go with friends. Um, and then yeah, my other suggestion is there's lots of concerts. I know Coldplay performed in August while I was there. I didn't get tickets. I could have, but I didn't because I prioritize school. Remember, school first, always when you're there. Um, because it can help your GPA a lot and it looks good on your transcript if you have a good grade. Um, then yeah, honestly, that's about it. That's all my suggestions. That's my rundown. And yeah, I guess, oh, there's this one question. What are some things that might make you stand out in the application process? Um,
Uh, Sorry, because we do have limited time and we're already over time.
cool.
If possible, can we leave the Q&A section or answer questions afterwards?
That works. Okay, I guess that's it for me. Yeah,
All
if you
right.
have any questions, you guys can, ask them now, and then Joe and the staff will answer. But if not, it was a really cool trip. I highly suggest going. 10 out of 10 experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So again, we do have very limited time and we're already over time for the info session. Thank you so much for everyone staying. And the next will be covering the more important stuff about applying to the program. But we do have the Q&A section afterwards, which will not be recorded so that you can ask questions freely to our staff and to Hugo and to our instructors. All right, so jumping back to the program itself. Now I hope you already have the interest to apply. Let's talk about eligibility. To be eligible to apply to summer abroad program, all you need to do is that you will have a minimum CGPA of 1.75 at the time of application. So first year students can also apply even without no final grade because the selection committee will have access to your grades and transcripts. Students from different faculties or professional programs or even graduate programs, they are eligible to apply as well, even open to the alumni and non-degree students. But please note that our programs prioritizing on the returning UofT students, the current students. As for students from other North American universities, they can also apply, but they do require a letter of permission, which you can find more information on our website. In terms of the application procedures, application will open on December 5th at 10 a.m. That is this week, and you will have time to January 14th at 4 p.m. to apply. And please note that this is not first come, first serve, so all the applications will be reviewed only after the application deadline, the January 14th. And you will pay for the 210 application fee, which is non-refundable. But for this year, you can also select a second choice location in one application. Regarding the academic admission criteria, so the selection committee will look into your academic record over the last or the past 12 months. And they also take a look of the relevance of the course to the applicant's program study. That being said, we know that our courses focus on inviting all students of different disciplines to apply. So that's why in the personal statement section, you can also indicate why you have selected this particular course or how this course align with your academic and personal goal, especially if this is not aligned or with your current program studies. Then last part would be a video assessment, and we'll have more information readily on our website. So this is the application website that you can go to. On the top right corner, that's login to application. This is where you will submit your application. But before doing so, I would highly recommend you to check other tabs, such as the top, the rightmost one, the apply section. That will give you more information on the application procedure and deadlines, including all other policies that may benefit for your information before submitting your own program application. Regarding admission decisions, this is normally sending out starting from the late January to early February. So you would have time to decide whether you want to accept this offer or not. If you want to accept, you will have 1 week to confirm your participation by paying the non-refundable deposit of $1,000. The remaining fee that will be due in March or in April. Let's talk about the cost because Oxford is one of the most expensive programs, and I would highly recommend you to check our website for the cost section. It's under the program page, England Oxford program page, and you can see on the left section, there's a cost section. So this website has been, or this page has been updated, and I know the letter is too small to read, but essentially you'll be able to navigate to the page and find the relevant information, depends on whether you're a domestic student or international students. There will be fees paying to us and also additional costs that you should budget for. Then, just like I said, Oxford can be expensive. So we also recommend students to budget now and check for maybe different resources for the potential venues that apply for the financial aid. Like what Hugo just mentioned earlier, CIE, or the Center for International Experience, they offer what they call the IE Plus Award, International Experience Award. I myself, when I was a student, I also got the award, and I think it's really beneficial, especially for the students who are coming from international background. It's because this award open to both domestic and also international students. We will also have how to finance your summer abroad webinar scheduled for January 2026, and I recommend everyone to sign up for that one and talk to the Reg office and talk to any department for the potential aid. Regarding the visas and insurance, please note that you will need to arrange your own visa if necessary, and we will provide you with supporting documents, but you will need to check because that will be the student's responsibility to ensure that you have a visa if needed one to enter UK. And regarding our EDI resources, we are committed to support all students in your study abroad experience, and we have a launch webpage of EDIA. Relevant information can be found on our website. So please feel free to scan the QR code. Please note that this session will be recorded and available for students to review in the future. But meanwhile, please go to our website and check for the EDIA tab and learn more details. As you start planning for your summer abroad journey, you may already realize that different countries may have distinct cultures, norms, and political landscapes. So understanding those changes and those norms is quite important for you to plan ahead. We have also a dedicated page for the site or region-specific EDI resources for our students as well. We're also committed to provide a welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone. So that's why we're working with the Accessibility Services Office to ensure resources are made available for students living with a disability or diverse learning needs. So if any students, you may require disability-related accommodations or support for the courses offered by the Summer Abroad, you will need to first register with the Accessibility Services Office so that an effective accommodation plan can be put in place before you travel abroad. So this is quite important for you to plan early to make sure that it's already in place before you start your summer abroad experience. And lastly, we also have our Summer Abroad Inclusion, Diversity, and Excellence Award. It's a new one, and it's awards for the undergraduate students who have contributed to the advancement of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So there will be 4 awards available, and each will worth 5,000 each. This can play a significant part for your funding, so please check for the relevant resources available on our website as well. Lastly, just want to highlight our timeline here. Application will open in December 5th, and you will have time till January 14th to submit application for the England program. Please note we also have other programs. They have a later deadline to February 4th, but for the England one, the deadline to submit application, including the video assessment, is January 14th. And make sure to follow us on the Instagram, and we'll post more relevant information and updated information from our students. And during the summertime, we'll also have students taking over and share their experience abroad. Lastly, we will have more information for you to stay connected with us. We have different ways of staying connected with us, and also you can book one-on-one information or advising sessions with our advisors.